Good evening. Welcome to the Tuesday, November 12th, 2024 regular meeting of the Stoughton School Committee. This meeting is being recorded by SMAC for future broadcasting. Please rise if you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item on our agenda is public comment. Thank you, Mr. Ford. All right. The public comment portion of the meeting shall not exceed 15 minutes. Citizens of the district will be allowed up to 3 minutes to make their statement and must begin their comments by stating their name and address. Please be respectful. Public comment is not a discussion, debate, or dialogue between individuals and the school committee. It is an opportunity for a citizen to express an opinion on a topic within the school committee's authority. The authority of the school committee primarily concerns the Stoughton Public Schools budget, the performance of the superintendent, and the educational goals and policies of the district's public schools. We have two people. Are you ready? All right. First person, Mr. Lurie, if you'd like to present. Don't forget to push the little green light whenever you're ready. Yes, okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the time that I can address the body here, because I'm representing my own information and opinion. All right, I happen to be on the Finance Committee, but I don't represent them in the information I want to share. Okay, so there was a conference that we go to, a lot of us go every year, and it's called the Association of Town Finance Committees. It's a part of the MMA. It's sort of like a subgroup of the MMA. And we talk about best practices. We learn about what the greatest towns are doing in order to better their towns. And it's eye-opening, because you can really improve your own town by just adopting ideas that you learn while you're there. So one of the problems that we know that we have within our town is that we don't have any financial policies. They can be done by your body, along with the Select Board and the Finance Committee. Matter of fact, it's one of our responsibilities, along with making budgets for town meeting and doing transfers, which you've experienced last week. We made one for you recently. So those are two responsibilities. And a third, and just as important responsibility, is recommending policies for your board and the Select Board to adopt for the town, for the betterment of the entire town. So there's a method that was discovered. There was a problem that they had in the town of Mansfield, in which they had a huge influx, like within 1 year, this giant surge of students, and they didn't know what they were going to end up doing. They had major financial issues that came up very fast, and it caused them to have to figure out, in collaboration between the Select Board, the Finance Committee, and the school, in what was called a tri-commission. So it would just be chair, vice chair of school, chair, vice chair of Select Board, chair, vice chair of Finance Committee, and they collaborated and worked through and successfully managed to navigate through a very hard time. Now, we're not in the same dire straits that they were faced with when they ended up having to get a tri-commission, but we see the kinds of things that are changing in our town that we think could be improved by just forming this kind of a group. The problem with the Finance Committee is that we didn't step up. We tried to incorporate this kind of discussion as like leading the way, if you will, from the Finance Committee. And people kind of, we ended up going around and around a lot, and it was because there wasn't enough understanding as to how your body and the Select Board would handle that. So there was a sense of the meeting vote that we took, and the sense was across the Finance Committee was that that everybody felt that it was important. And there's my time, but they felt it was important enough.
Thank you, Mr. Lurie. Could you make sure to state your address?
Oh, it's 18 Robinette Road in Stoughton, Precinct 6.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And the next person we have for public comment is Ms. Lyons.
Hi, Lisa Lyons, 104 Curtis Ave, Precinct 2. So I'm just going to pick up where Mr. Laurie left off. So the sense of the meeting is people think it's important. I would just like to reiterate how badly Stoughton needs collaboration in the town so that there's not two separate sides of the town. It should be one town, Stoughton, for both the school and the municipal side. And I'd like to commend this board and Dr. Bayetta for trying to implementing and realizing how important a combined capital plan is. It's huge. It's a roadmap to what we need to do. And to Mr. Laurie's point earlier, if you would be willing to invite the Finance Committee and the Select Board to attempt a, let's call it a trilateral commission, because that's the terminology we heard at the, he said MMA, it stands for Mass Municipal Finance Association. And we all learned best practices there. And I did send it out to every town meeting rep, the Select Board, and I'm pretty sure somebody else. I need to get email addresses here so I could send you the budgeting 101 and the from the Division of Local Services primer on best financial practices. If you all want it, if I can get your email addresses. I know I have some, I just don't have everybody's email address. And I would be more than happy to send that to you as well. And if you could do that, I think it would do a lot to bring our town together and stop all the divisiveness. And I thank you for your time. How's that, Lindsay?
Thank you very much.
Exactly 2 minutes. Like on the dot. Thank you.
She's practiced. All right, thank you very much. No one else? All right. The next item on our agenda is the Student Advisory Representative update, and I would like to turn it over to Ms. Colleen Fitzgerald.
Thank you. So last week we started term 2, so some people have switched over some of their classes. The theater department will be showcasing their performance of Hadestown Teen Edition this weekend, Friday and Saturday at 7 and Sunday at 4. Fall sports have ended with obviously the exception of the football Thanksgiving game, which will be hosted at Canton. Our Powder Puff teams have also started practicing, as well as the cheerleading team. And this year's Powder Puff game will be home the day before Thanksgiving. And winter sports registration are still open until November 29th. Student Council hosted a successful homecoming on November 2nd, and we're also preparing for our pep rally in about 2 weeks, and each class is starting to decorate their spirit walls and tapestries.
Thank you very much. You guys have been busy. Any questions or comments for our student representative? Yes.
Thank you so much for that update. I was curious if there was any kind of fundraising or food raising that might be going on preemptively for the Thanksgiving break.
Yeah, so our student council, we usually do some sort of like fundraising. We do like, I think a clothing drive as like kind of a spirit week, where each grade will try to bring in as much clothing, and then we also bring like we do kind of like a penny drive where each grade will bring in pennies to fundraise for our student council, and it's kind of a competition between each grade. So that's how we kind of get like that kind of fundraising in.
But no food drive?
I'm actually unsure of that. I can look into that.
Okay.
Oh.
I just want to say that OMS is doing a food drive in November. Big food drive in OMS. I also coached Powder Puff in the early 2000s. 2 victories, no losses. It's all about the defense in Powder Puff, not the offense. It's all about the defense.
So for people watching, if they wanted to help the students, you know, bring in food for, you know, for families that might be in need, which we know with inflation and the rising costs could be an increasing number of our neighbors. Definitely. So at least talk to the middle school, and we'll find out about the high school. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barbaros, yes.
Yes, I know you're probably aware occasionally surveys are done at the high school. I was wondering if there are any surveys going on now or that you're aware of, or anybody you know that's aware of any surveys that happened recently?
Any surveys I'm not aware of as of recently.
All right, thank you.
I just want to say thank you to all the students who organized the trunk or treat. My kids had a lot of fun at that event. It was great to see all the clubs out and get a sense of that. The little kids look up to the high schoolers, so it was great to see them. Really excited to see you guys and what you could offer, as well as the candy. So thank you very much to Student Council and to all the groups that put that on. It was a lot of fun. All right, anything else? All right, thank you. Next, I'll turn it over to Dr. Bayetta for the superintendent update.
Thank you, folks. Good evening to all. Just a couple of bullets for you to have this evening. First of all, I continue to visit all of our specialized classrooms throughout the district, having completed most recently the OMS and SHS, and tomorrow and next week I'll be at the Gibbons, the South, the Hanson, and the Wilkins. I did the Dahl last year, and this is just an opportunity for me to see the classrooms and all of that. I attended the Jones School PTO on the 21st. We now have a PTO organization at the Jones School. It's the first time, and it's very well organized, and they're definitely doing some great stuff. I also went to the Touch a Truck, and I actually donated, and I won a ride on the fire truck. I decided to give that back to the Jones School and said, please do a fundraiser with it and put all the money towards the kids in some way, shape, or form. Originally, we were going to send Mr. Colantonio, but we decided not to.
I would have taken it.
I provided you some ELE documents. It's basically taking that thicker document and trying to break it down into the legal requirements that we have to deal with. The OMS schedule group, the Labor Management Committee for OMS, will be starting their work. No implementation until into the fall of the following year, if you will, at the earliest, but they're looking at their schedule and what it means and time on learning and so on and so forth. Next week, I am at a virtual training on the anonymous threat mitigation. It's being put on by a national organization through my national organization of superintendents. And then lastly, one of the things I'm really happy to announce this evening that you have in front of you is the Advanced Studies and Leadership Program that, because we're members of North River Collaborative, will allow for a 2-week for students who are incoming 8th graders this July and incoming 9th graders, 2 from Stoughton, will be able to attend. It is at their cost. The cost is also is $1,590 for the 2 weeks living on campus and going through literally this whole concept of leadership and working together and learning together and all of that. So we will be pushing out information to students. And if they are hopefully wanting to attend, we're only able to attend because we're North River Collaboratives. Traditionally, this has only been a Cape Cod item. They're expanding themselves, and they did it through North River Collaboratives. So we hope to see some of our students decide to apply, and hopefully at least 2 of our students get it. And that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Dr. Bayetta? No? All right. Moving on then. Let's go to the first item of new business, which is the letter from Stoughton High School Principal Ms. Miller recommending the Peter Everett Memorial Scholarship in memory of Mr. Peter Everett, who was a Stoughton High School graduate from the class of 1966, a teacher at the Gibbons for 35 years, and a longtime Stoughton High School referee and umpire for football, basketball, and softball. The scholarship will be awarded to 1 football and 1 softball player pursuing a degree in education or a sports-related field. Did you overlap with Mr.
I did.
Everett?
I overlapped with him in many ways, and actually in the last few years kept in contact with him. He was living up in Vermont, and we would touch via phone at least 2 to 3 times a year just to exchange what was going on. And he was very kind to me when I got the job here in Stoughton, being a local kid coming home. But I had him as my PE teacher at the Gibbons School in 4th grade. many, many moons ago, and until 6th grade, and then we went to the junior high. But then I also had him on another note. He was a softball coach when I was a head coach. So I had him behind the plate a number of times where we had some disagreements on the strike zone. But Mr. Everett, I still called him to this day Mr. Everett. I could never call him by his first name. Was very kind to me, very good to a lot of other students as well that really appreciated him through the years. So it was a difficult loss for the family, but he's in a good place. And we thank the family.
Any questions or comments about the scholarship?
I just will say, as always, I really appreciate when folks honor the memory of loved ones with scholarship. I think it's just like a really nice way to continue to give back to our students. So lots of gratitude to the family. Thank you for thinking of our students.
I agree. All right. Can I have a yes, Chris?
I just want to add, I also think it's a really lovely and moving tribute. So, agreed.
All right. Can I have a motion to accept the Peter Everett Memorial Scholarship?
So moved.
All right. That motion is made by Lindsay. A second?
Second?
Seconded by Armando. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, the motion is carried 5-0. Our condolences to Mr. Everett's loved ones and all he touched for their loss. And again, I echo the committee in thanking Ms. Heather Everett McKinley and the family for choosing to remember Mr. Everett in this meaningful way. If there are no objections, I would like a motion to move the CPAC update from the other matters to new business. It's just going to be a quick update, and we have the CPAC, a few members of the CPAC here. Does anybody mind if we do that? I think we have to make a formal motion just to move it up in the agenda. Karen, do you want to make the motion?
Move out the CPAC.
All right. Second?
Second.
Seconded by Lindsay. It's been moved and seconded. Roll call vote.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Thank you. So quick CPAC update, and then we will get to our presentation. So I'll start off. Karen, do you have anything that you would like to introduce CPAC? Otherwise, we'll give the floor to Ms. Cavey and Ms. Teixeira. And don't forget to push the button so it's green on there. So.
Hello. Good evening. So we've had a few projects that we've been working on so far with CPAC. The most recent completed project was we had our Bright Night Awards. Was that a week ago? I don't know. Time
It was the
stood
30th.
still. Okay. It's on the 30th, where we honored teachers that were nominated at the end of last school year. From all the schools, Jones all the way up through the high school. We had great attendance. It was a really, really well attended event. Took the time, went through and recognized each one. Dr. Baeta spoke, and Mr. Ed Clark spoke as well. And everybody seemed to have a really good time.
Agreed. Yeah, it was something that we'd been wanting to do for a while, and just finally were able to sort of make it happen. And I think it was just like, a good feeling event for everyone involved. So that was great. What else have we been doing?
Yeah.
We've been working a bit with the new Jones PTO, as Dr. Baeta mentioned. They are just kicking off this year for the first time. And since a lot of us are sort of veteran PTO parents, we've been helping them through that process and just supporting them, since a lot of their students kind of have a lot of crossover with our students. And it's a really great place for us to sort of meet parents and start to let them know who we are and what we do, so that we can support them as needed.
Yeah, we've had a lot of good connections with Ms. Veloso, and trying to figure out how we want to get ourselves organized so that when families walk in the door at the Jones and they hear the words like, this is an IEP, that there's people in the community ready to welcome them with open arms and get them connected. We were also hosted a table at the Touch a Truck so that we could have some FaceTime. We had a very successful day at Stoughton Day. We also hosted a table that day. And our next big project that we are working on is a collaboration with the Canton CPAC to do a resource fair in March with them. Mm-hmm. They hosted one last year, and then they reached out to some towns nearby for support and wanting to take it on with another CPAC. So that's up and running. We've had two 2 meetings now with them.
Yeah, and that was another like big goal of ours. Actually, 2 things. One was to do a resource fair, and one was to collaborate with another CPAC because we're starting small. But a lot, it's kind of the culture of CPACs, to collaborate with one another and just do bigger and better things for their communities. So we were really excited when they reached out about that. That's going to be you said in March, right?
Yeah.
We're presenting our basic rights. We're skipping around a little bit, but we're presenting our basic rights presentation, which is, I think, maybe the only requirement of ours. So that will be this month on the 21st. The Federation for Children with Special Needs is going to come and present that for us. So
In
that
high school,
that will be
in person at the high school, and then also online.
Yeah.
And then we, January, February, and March, we're working with the group, I can never remember their name, that we're getting our
Oh,
trainings
the Pilgrim Area Collaborative. We're working with them to get some speakers in on different topics, and we're still kind of narrowing in on what we're going to do, but we're going to have like a little speaker series, and then, yeah, we'll
it'll be in the
kind of
spring and time
get
for
ready to
Friday
start it
again.
all over again. I also just wanted to thank all of you and thank Dr. Baeta and Mr. Clark for being so supportive of us and kind of giving us the autonomy to just kind of support, other parents and just do the things that we've been really wanting to do. And it's all been really, really great. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Any questions or?
Just
Dr.
2
Baeta?
things. So our CPAC is also part of our the parent group that I meet with. Actually, we have a meeting tomorrow morning.
Oh, right.
Not tomorrow.
Thursday morning.
Thursday morning. Thank you. So that they're part of that whole group that's doing fundraising, supporting students, staff. I did go and do come from a history of seeing a Bright Night type of award called something else in my prior district. I had nothing to do with it except just think it's wonderful. It's wonderful to see students and families nominating people who work for Stoughton Public Schools, and they don't just have to be a teacher. They can be anyone that a family and a student feels has supported them, based on their individual needs and supports. The other request through Ms. Powers and CPAC is to take a look at some of our as more called now sensitive rooms, if you will, sensory rooms. So I'm going to be putting together probably a couple of calendars, because I think some people can probably do work day. Some people are probably going to have to do it in the evening. If we do it in the evening, then I got to make sure the buildings are open. So I'm trying to coordinate. So I haven't forgotten. I wrote it down again so that I make sure I put some dates out to everybody. And then lastly, to Ms. Cavey's point, the CPAC is supposed to be a standalone organization that comes to us for making sure that we're doing the right thing for kids and the staff. So, their budgets are very limited in terms of what they can and can't do, and some of these speakers can be very expensive. Some of them can be free. So I think one of the things we also need to take a look at is that within the whole message of special education, that we're involving everybody as much as possible within providing those opportunities for parents in general and staff to attend some of those speaker series, because there are some really interesting speakers out there that really know how to really talk to families about what it is to have a child who has some academic goals or social goals or whatever the case may be. So thank you to them.
Thank you.
Karen?
So for those who are listening, CPAC is Special Education Parent Advisory Committee. And if you guys would want to give a contact, like an email or a phone number, where if anyone's thinking about that who wasn't involved yet but would like to get involved in special education and a parent group
That's great.
for special ed, that would be great if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, that's a great point. So we can be reached a couple of different ways. The easiest maybe is you could just reach out to us by email at CPAC Stoughton. So it's SEPAC Stoughton at gmail.com. We also have a Facebook group that is private for families that have students with disabilities or IEPs or 504s. And then we also have a public Facebook page where we can kind of use that like a bulletin board. But yeah, please feel free to reach out by email. And then if it's something that warrants, more of a phone call, we'll happily share all of our stuff.
And I just want to say you guys are really just amazing, the things that you do, incredibly welcoming to students and to families. And I would suggest anyone who has any kind of interest, you guys are really easygoing to talk to. So please give them a buzz, give them an email, check it out, and really just thank you both so much for all of the energy and all the work. I know it's a lot. So you guys really put a lot of passion, and a lot of people benefit from it. So thank you both so much for all the work you guys do.
Thank you. Yeah, if anyone's listening and having a hard time with the IEP process or just feeling a little bit isolated because of what they're dealing with, please reach out to us. That's why we're here. We have a couple different functions, but that's the one that's the most important to us. We've been there, we get it, so please just reach out. Anything else that Lindsay has?
Yeah, just really quickly wanted to echo. I think the work you both do and the CPAC more broadly does is volunteer. So thank you for doing that. I think special education is really challenging to navigate, especially as a family who's maybe going through it for the first time. So your work is important and we appreciate it. I was curious, I'm glad, Karen, you sort of paused to explain what the CPAC is and offer a little bit more context there just for folks who are listening at home. But I was wondering in that vein, who might consider going to the Basic Rights Workshop or the resource fair? What, if somebody's watching this, who might be a good person to go to those events?
Yeah. So I think as far as the basic rights presentation, really anybody could benefit from it because regulations and laws are changing all the time. And this year DESE came out with a new IEP form. So that's something that we're going to touch on at that meeting too. So even if you're a veteran special ed parent, that could be helpful. But, obviously families of younger students, kids at the Jones, anyone who's just getting started with the process, I think would find it the most beneficial. And then as far as the resource fair, which is going to be in March, we're really hoping to provide resources to kids from the preschool level right up through,
22.
Yeah,
the
transition age.
program even.
We're hoping to just have resources on services and recreational opportunities and summer camps and
Yeah, just anything that
all
can,
the things.
anything
that
can touch.
is adaptive or inclusive. So I guess in that vein too, if anyone's listening that wants to have a table at our resource fair, please reach out because we're
Do you have a date yet? Do you know?
it is March, was it the 6th? I believe it's March 6th,
And the location?
Canton High School,
Time?
6
In the
p.m.
evening, yeah. 6 to 8?
6
Yeah,
p.m.,
2 hours. It's a Thursday Thursday.
Yeah.
night.
Sure we get that out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're just kind of starting to, it's a little nebulous right now, so we're just kind of building it, but we're excited, so I guess we spilled the beans.
You have to.
No, you have to commit it, yes. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you coming, and yes, I think this collaboration is great, and I'm really encouraged that I think we're going to see a lot of great things come of this, and thank you very
We
much
feel
for all
the
your
same
work.
way.
and
Thank you
coming.
so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the EduClimber data platform presentation.
Yeah, I'd like to bring up Ms. Diane Dunna, who is in charge of all of our data. She's supported she's supported through my office, Mr. Ford's office, the curriculum office, and then, of course, our principals. And then we kicked off the EduClimber on the PD day on the 5th with the staff. I did the kickoff, and then they broke out into different sessions as organizations. Or departments, I should say, in grade levels. And so tonight we're giving you a little bit of that 10,000 foot that we've been talking about, how we want to use data going forward and what it means and so on and so forth. So I'll turn it over to Ms. McDonough.
So I just wanted to share a little bit about EduClimber. This is the presentation that our educators saw during the PD Day on November 5th. So I just wanted to go through some of this information because I think it might be helpful for you. During baseball or Moneyball. So both in baseball and education, large data sets are reviewed for specific data points and analytics. Baseball teams analyze it to create their rosters and improve performance. And similarly, in schools, we do the same thing. We analyze student performance to inform teaching strategies and interventions and improve our curriculum. In baseball, in Moneyball in particular, they looked at data to find, hidden talents. In education, we do the same thing. We have students that, they may have some hidden talents that haven't been accessed yet. So we have the capacity when viewing data to see, where are their hidden talents? And of course, in both education and baseball, we're constantly looking at assessments, looking at data to improve student outcome. I didn't want to play that, sorry. And the objectives for the training were for teachers to actually navigate through the program. They actually took a look at the student profile. They spent a lot of time on the student profile, which ironically EduClimber refers to as the student baseball card. So there's that connection again with baseball. The student profile contains all the student stats or data in one place, and I will show you that when I demo it in a bit. Teachers also looked or located different learning opportunities within the platform itself. There's also learning opportunities and modules within the platform. If they're unsure how to find something, they can type something into a search engine and it will populate some documents that they can actually go and read and find the information they're looking for. The educators also learned why EduClimber is essential for those data-making decisions and how to improve student performance, and how EduClimber integrates with our MTSS or our multi-tiered support systems within the district. What is EduClimber? EduClimber is a data platform that compiles data from various data sources. EduClimber focuses on 4 key domains, as they call them, and that's academics, behavior, the social emotional learning, and attendance. We had some challenges here, and it's common across education about data. Data is disconnected within our district. It is housed in many different places. So if an educator or a school leader wanted to search for attendance, behavior assessment, SEL, or other data, it is housed in various locations. So it makes it very difficult for an educator or a school leader to compile a complete picture of a student. And then there are times too when by the time we get that data, it's outdated or it's not useful anymore. So EduClimber actually helps us gather that information, and it creates a historical picture of our students. So why EduClimber? I did talk a little bit about this. It centralizes all the student data on one platform in one location for educators. It supports the whole student. We can see all the data points. We can see the attendance, the academics, the behavior, social, emotional, and other data information that we can actually upload as a district. The nice thing is it has data visualizations, it has graphs, it has data tables, it has heat trends, and it's easy for teachers and school leaders to analyze the data by looking at those graphs. It can provide up to 5 years of historical data for our educators to view. It can help facilitate intervention, so we can actually monitor how students are performing with their intervention. We can also, take a look to see how effective the intervention programs are. And it encouraged collaboration among teachers or teams of teachers when they're discussing students. And of course, it strengthens the data-driven decisions not only at the classroom level, but also at the school and district level. And EduClimber is a solution for data challenges. It was actually created by and for educators. And it's, according to the educators who created it, it's easy to use, it's easy to implement, it saves time because the data is all there in one location. And then what are the benefits for educators? Once again, there's a data dashboard that houses all the data from those 4 key domains. And as I said, we can also import other data as well. The student profile, that is that baseball card. With a click of a button, a teacher can see all of the student academic history, behavior, attendance, social emotional history. And like I said, it can store up to 5 years of data in that location. The data visualizations, it's easy for teachers to view the data. Once again, communication and collaboration. Teachers who actually work with a single student have access to all of the data so they can actually view what is going on with that student. And then, of course, intervention, as I mentioned. And then EduClimber, it has ways of creating reports. So if a teacher needs a report to share during a BBST meeting or when they're meeting with a family member, they can actually generate reports right there in a system. So instead of waiting and printing reports from 5 different locations, it's all there in one spot. And it supports the whole student. And how does this happen? Once again, we can track the interventions that students are receiving across all tiers. It can visualize and show us the progress that students are making. And it supports, as I said, collaboration across teams. And the nice thing, it provides information on academics and non-academics as well. So because we're looking at those 4 domains, as I mentioned, the academics, attendance, incidents, and SEL, we can see how a student is doing overall. So how are their chronic absenteeism maybe affecting their academics? How is something going on at home, their social emotional, affecting academics as well as attendance? So it's a nice picture of a student. It gives us the whole comprehensive view. And how we'll be using it in Stoughton? Once again, that data visualization. It's easy to view trends and patterns within data for not only just individual students, but we can see it across a grade level or in a classroom. Collaboration among educators, school leaders. Nice thing is we can actually see early warning signs once we have all that data in front of us. I mentioned earlier that intervention. And then for school and system data, we can view the data to see how our programs are doing, how is the curriculum. We can take a look to see where our resources might need to be. Student profile, once again, that baseball card to show us all that data in one location. And then, as I mentioned, the data can be used to support our BBSTs. That's our building-based support teams within each building. And then that domain interaction. So those 4 key data areas, how are they interacting and how is it giving us an overview of the whole student? And then I can log in to show you and demo what it would look like. And every time teachers log in or admin log in, there is a message here to remind them about student privacy. And here's the baseball, but I'm going to go in a different way to show you what it looks like. So here is the stats of our students. This is a student profile. At the top, a teacher can see how the student's attendance
is doing. The student happens to have 100% attendance. Underneath would be any incident reports. The student does not have any. But over on the right are all the students' academics. So here, this I believe is a 4th grade student. So here is all the literacy scores as well as math scores. A teacher can click right into one of these assessments or click on this historical data to take a deeper dive. So if we just want to look at their star reading, we can see how the student has done from 21 to 22 in the fall, all the way up to the current assessment that they just took. We can do the same thing for the oral passage reading. Here, this is the progress that the student has made, and the student is being compared to the district average. So the blue is the district average, the green is the student. Same thing is true for math. We can see the students' progress over time. And like I said, you can also take a deeper dive by clicking in. And this is giving you also their grade book now. So how have they done on their report cards? So it's showing you how they've done over time. So there's lots of data here for a teacher to take a deeper dive into a student's progress. I can show you what a secondary student will look like. Let me pull up a secondary student. There we go. So secondary student obviously has a little bit more data. We have literacy, math, science, social studies, and then even the specials. Once again, attendance, and the student does not have any incidents. So this student profile, once again, is like a baseball card. It's giving you all the students' information here. If a teacher wanted to take a deeper dive into historical data, they can just click right in, and it will populate the students' data. And once again, it also includes scores that they have received in their report cards or their grade book. The other nice thing, at the grade level or district level, we can look for trends and patterns as well. So I'll take a look at a grade. So I'm going to do all elementary schools. Take a look at grade 4. And we take a look at one of the academics, and then we hit search. It's now populating all of our data for that grade over time. The other nice thing we can do is we can click into this data wall. And now it's showing us a breakdown of each individual student. They're not naming the students for privacy reasons. And then it has all of the information for all of those assessments here on the right-hand side. So in the color code will tell us whether or not the student is below grade level, on grade level, etc. So there's lots of information. It can be overwhelming for our educators where this is something brand new, but they were trained, all the admin have been trained as well. So that's just a quick overview. Are there any questions for me that I can maybe answer using EduClimber?
I have a few questions.
Sure.
Go first.
I have a whole bunch. We'll start with Armando.
Go for it.
All right, don't forget your microphone.
5 years, why the 5 years limitation? We have 12 grades.
That is a great question. I actually have that question out to EduClimber. That has come up by most of our educators. Why is it only 5 years? So once I have that information, I'd be happy to share that back with you.
Okay.
But that's where their limitations when we actually got the program, they said was 5 years.
Okay. If you have 5 years limitation and data is scattered all over the place, how will the data be imported into EduClimber? Or do we have to wait 5 years before we can do a 5-year analysis?
Right. So the tech team and I are working with EduClimber to import data right now because MCAS is not on here, but that's being uploaded. So there are data points that can be uploaded manually into the program. So that could be something we do after 5 years is upload data manually.
That's manually and not automated?
Yes. So it's something.
A lot of hours or days or months, years. to enter all that?
One of the things about these systems that's really interesting is, many are brand new, as you know, not all of them. Two, they have to be back mapped, if you will, to work with each other. You still need, quote, the program person that's going to map them on the back end so that it automatically connects. The second most important part is we need to know that our Power School data is accurate. Because if you import inaccurate data, you get inaccurate reports. So things, for example, like student withdrawals, and what kind of an impact that has when you go to run a report. If all of a sudden 7 students aren't here, and they're still in our Power School, and then they're still in our EduClimber, the data is skewed. So all of that has to be, and all of that is manual. That's why we have data folks, right, and folks that are taking the data and updating the data.
Yeah, it's it looks like a worthwhile program to use. I just don't see it being useful until several years of accumulated data or data reentry.
So could I add to that? Sure. What we were just talking about? So what's happening now is we're looking at what we can populate directly from our system and what has to be manually or through some kind of conversion factor put in. Just today, we got the templates to pull MCAS in. So the company set us up with a template adapted from what they're using in Fall River so that our MCAS we can pull from the security portal, and then we can push it directly in. But what's going to end up happening is we're going to start to look and see what we can do. There might be some data that we have in some areas we can pull to Power School, which is a direct feed then into the system. There'll be a calendar which we put in place so when MCAS access or other data comes out, we'll know to pull the data out of the security portal, put it in a CSV file, put it in a template, and then do a direct upload. So we'll be having data in real time right when it comes out once we figure out where everything's at and how we do it. Now, the biggest issues, like with MCAS, we've already solved them. With current data, like attendance data and everything that we can push into Power School, we can then push into the system. Within a year, we'll have it figured out. Within 2 years, we'll have all the timelines, so everything's timely. And we'll make some adjustments to our system, but in a very short amount of time, we're going to have everything where it needs to be. And I think what the superintendent was saying about the data being clean, I think that's as important as anything, because if everything in Power School is exactly how it's supposed to be, that's not only a good draw, but that's also a good place to push into, so everything's automated. So I think, by next year, we'll have great data, working out all the bugs this year. Within 2 years, it'll be right on the money. So
very good. I think
some of our programs automatically populate. Because this is a Renaissance platform, we use Renaissance for our SEL assessment for students, so that automatically gets populated, as well as all of our benchmark standards for math and literacy. So all of those automatically get populated into the program.
I think, like I said, I think it's a worthwhile program at this point. I think it presents a lot of data, but it doesn't seem to present information, and it relies on the educator to take that data and massage it into information, useful information. And I was wondering how far is the program as the use of AI to do this for the educator, as opposed to having to train every educator to use it to actually get useful information out of it?
It's a great question.
So AI in student data is at a very interesting place because of student security. I don't see it happening today or tomorrow because the AI world right now we want to use, and as you know, one of the breakout sessions I went out at the school committee conference was on AI policy that I'll be discussing with you in the future. Right now, this platform is to still have educators who are in the classroom who know their students utilize this data as a way to form instruction. So that's part A. Part B is creating long-term through AI, what are some of the fundamental things that we should be doing that we aren't doing that does work? So today, for example, I was doing an item analysis of grade 3, 4, and 5 ELA results this afternoon by myself. Through the work that Diane did, I now can take that through a different system because it's not here yet, and I can do this all by cutting and pasting and so on. it's going to be a click of a button within the next year, where we can take the standards, and I can say, instead of saying we had 45 standards across 3 grades that we had problems with, this is all fake numbers, I should be able to go into the system and not only get a score for a student, but actually look at a student long-term, how did they do on certain tests and certain standards. So is this now a student that struggles with this complex standard in ELA, and they've been doing it all along, 3rd grade results, 4th grade, or actually kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade with our STAR, then 3rd. There is some correlation between STAR, reading and math and MCAS scores, and that's another area where we have to sharpen our pencils, if you will, to really take a look at that data, and really, is it telling us that? Are the kids taking the assessment seriously? And so on. So we are not yet in K-12, pre-K-12 education, utilizing AI for the purposes of that type of situation. At least, and I'm not hearing this nationally.
Yeah.
There's a lot of safety issues that need to be discussed.
Understood. I just think if you give raw data to 10 people and they're to interpret and then into useful information, which then can be executed into some type of lesson plan, something like that, you're going to get 10 different answers for the same data.
So it's a great point, and I don't think you're accurate in your assessment. Here's the difference that we're trying to come to the table. We're trying to have one place in the district where all data is available. That's part 1 of this 2-year scenario, if you will. We have one-stop shopping in Stoughton. I don't have to go to this platform to get this, that platform to get that, and then manipulate it on my own. The idea is eventually these will all be coming together, and students will have multiple different assessments, their grades, their scores on everything that they're doing, their attendance and SEL and incidents. The second part is if you haven't read or watched Moneyball in a long time, this is a lot about looking at the data from the perspective of what data is and not the emotions that go through some of the data. The quote excuses for why students can or can't. It's more about what are we doing as a district. And I'll give you an example. Today I saw some standards that I said, okay, when I meet with the curriculum team tomorrow, I'm going to say, I want us to take a look at some of these standards in these grades because we're all over the place. How come it's not more consistent from elementary school to elementary school? What's the issue? I'm not looking at who the students are, how many are male or female or anything. I'm just looking at the data that's in front of me and what's showing. Do we have a curriculum problem and where we teach it? And so on and so forth. So very much 10,000 feet of data, except for one thing. You got to think about having one place where we have all of the data and all of our platforms are finished. And a perfect example is the amount of work that the EL department has to do with their own data that doesn't go through XYZ. It's a whole different platform. And if it's not correct in our power school, then it's not going to be correct in our EduClimber.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
It does, and like I said, I think it's a worthwhile project, keeping the data in one place. But I see this if it's used that way, it's an assessment of the educator and not necessarily the child or the educator's program or the curriculum, more than an assessment of where the child is and how to proceed. But I have a whole bunch of questions. I won't ask them all now, but I do have a couple others
Can I add
to
something
ask.
in? Just also with this particular program, if we want to take bias out of people choosing to interpret the data however they want to look at it, one of the things that's powerful about this particular software is we can create specific reports, pulling any points we like. And so if we want to have a specific grade level or a school look at something, we can actually take some time and build a really detailed report, pulling on specific points so that everybody sees the same construct through their own student's lens or interpretation. And where we talked about it is we have annual benchmark data meetings at the elementary level. We do 3 a year. If we wanted the entire school district to focus on one specific part of the curriculum or against the standards, we could actually then create a report and share it across an entire grade level or across an entire school so that everybody's focused on one thing through the lens of their kids. So it's what you can do with this and beyond just aggregating all the data in one place and be able to cross-correlate the data. It's what you can then choose the vehicle to share the data with people as well. So they can do their own interpretation, or we can give a very specific lens. And that's one of the benefits that comes out of this piece of software.
Yeah, I take it probably has a statistics engine in there in which you can do cross tabs and everything else, so you can get a better comparison between the two. I have only two more questions, Chris.
Can we, do you mind waiting, or do you want to jump in with questions?
Two more questions, I promise. Actually, I have many more, but...
9 p.m.
Okay. Do you have the ability to track logins? You know, which educators logging in and you know, what they looked at?
That's a great question. I don't, at this time, no. But they're constantly making updates, so that could be something I ask.
For student privacy and an educator should probably be looking at child in 12th grade, educators in 3rd grade. And the other thing is, at this point, I'm assuming it doesn't, but do you know if the software company intends to allow parent access to their own children's account? Because instead of Power School, I guess, you can look at the grades, you can probably run analysis and determine where your child's doing anywhere, and then be able to help them at home, or ability to communicate with their educator and help out as best they can.
I don't think that's available at this time, but I will ask.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here you go, Chris.
Chris, your turn.
The Inquisition Part 2. So first of all, I would like to follow up on my colleague's comment around usage data. I think usage data will be extremely informative and could help inform PD, and making sure that this is really being leveraged effectively. And it might bring to light to the administration additional uses that they may not have considered in implementation. So it goes both ways. So I agree, usage data I think would be highly effective. It seems right now that even if you don't have the 5 years of data, that an immediate use is, is there a launch date? When is the launch date?
We actually, at the PD, we train the teachers, so we're hoping that they will start using it. I know that during the elementary benchmark meetings that Mr. Ford was talking about, we will be using this. This is what we'll be using to look at the data.
So it's in place now?
It is in place. It's up and running for teachers to access.
Beautiful. So they could use this to inform parent-teacher conferences, for example? Are they able to print off the student card to show
Yes,
trends?
They can print specialized, customized reports, what they want to show the parents. You know, if they want to just show grades instead of behavior and absentee reports, they can print whatever they want. They can customize that report.
Is that something they could save as PDF out of curiosity?
Yes, they can.
So if so, they could even email that report?
Exactly.
Perfect. Does it track, does it trigger, is there any kind of trigger system in it, for example, for parent communications? I mean, you talk about early warning, for example, but, you know, if my kid is taking Algebra 2, and it's like 4 weeks into this, my kid says, "Oh yeah, I'm doing great," you know, and suddenly, I get the progress update, and it's like he's getting an F. He's not doing great. Is there any kind of like trigger system in there that will alert or remind an educator to reach out to a parent if a student looks like they're trending downward in their progress in class and might need additional supports?
There is not a notification system, but that's a great, I'll bring that up to the company as well.
I would definitely talk about that.
Yeah. Can I piggyback a little bit on that? So, I think there's a tremendous responsibility on our educators in today's world. There really is.
Yeah.
But I do think that the number one thing educators have to do is inform parents that their children aren't doing well. I'll leave it at that.
I agree 1,000%, which statistically is not possible. But I do agree, especially if there's going to be a partnership in education, which is really what happens, and came up with a lot of the focus groups around homework policy about how much parents appreciate the communications that go home and understanding what the expectations are from a teacher perspective and from a school perspective. So if there's any way we can reinforce that, I also would be interested in, because it does go both ways, is there any way, you talk about SEL tracking, does it track parent engagement? Meaning when the parents reach out to the teacher, is there any way to track that as well?
I think that's a great question, and these are the types of, so in working with this really new way of doing business, if you will, one of the things that the company, because we've been with them for so long with the STAR and all that other stuff, is we're trying to make sure that this software is user-friendly for our staff, that we can, instead of saying to teachers, here's a million different reports, we're going to facilitate some of the reports that they should be looking at as part of their data meetings or a parent conference, or a printout that they want to print out on Friday and send home and have it signed and brought back so that mom and dad or parent family see it, or a PDF, or that type of thing. The other part is, at least 3 of your questions have me thinking already, and one of your questions as well, around the usage of the data, who's in there, why, how come, so on. The other one is, the trigger system with parent communication. It's a very intriguing question. I mean, I have a lot of questions about it, but the fact of the matter is it could be yet another way that we are communicating by, on Friday, blah, 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 hit the system, and it sends that email to those parents where the kid is struggling. Right. And now it's on the parent to pick up the phone or send an email or so on. Our biggest headache continues, although we've seen great improvements, chronic absenteeism. How do we get that communication out on a regular basis to families? And we want to make this user-friendly. I think eventually, at the end of the day, I'll leave it here. At the end of the day, we want this to be the first two-way street of data and information between families, student, and the school department, their teachers, and not just a grade at report card and so on.
Right.
Sorry.
Agree. I think in time it could be used to inform letters of recommendation. For example, it could be used to inform like job applications, college applications. There's all sorts of implications there. A question I would ask the staff and faculty is, what sticky questions do they currently grapple with? If they had a magic wand that could answer that question, like what would that question be? And then for the administration or the leadership to think about how might this be leveraged to answer or provide some insights on those questions. So I would think about that. And then my final comment for now is using it for feedback loops. So using the middle school data to inform the upper elementary grades, upper elementary to inform the K2 grades, high school to inform the OMS grades, and especially around that whole student approach. It might also help shed light if you're doing that around promising practices. Like why are the students from this one teacher's third grade classroom doing so much better in eighth grade math? So, and I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for this. I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too, if I can say that. This is great. Looks like there's a long way to go, but this is a great start. I mean, I'm so happy. One of the things that made me happy early this year was that DESE recognition of the high school doing better and so on, and with the modernization of data collection and tracking. I mean, I'm really happy this is going forward. Can't tell you how happy I am. Sorry about my hard questions, but I'm happy.
Karen, I think you had a question.
Yeah, can you just give me some examples of how this is going to improve students' lives, or how is it going to benefit students? I could see like maybe the administration and how they can pull up data and so forth, and maybe that'll eventually trickle down, but you said they're using it hopefully now. So I'd like to know, how is that directly benefiting students at this point?
Right now, they're just starting to use it, but we can actually see, as I said, you had mentioned the transition years. We actually have middle school teachers who weren't able to access elementary data, but now they can access the STAR data and see how their students in sixth grade, I showed a sixth grade student, how they did for the last 4 years. So they can actually see how they're doing and progressing in both literacy and math on the benchmark. So that's one way. The other way is looking at their absenteeism. They're not just seeing this year's, they're seeing the last 5 years. So they can see, were there certain months where a student was absent? Is it a particular day of the week that a student is absent? So it can actually identify little trends within the pattern of the student. When I went to a training for EduClimber, the presenter actually said with the 4 domains, we can actually see a student might be performing really well academically, but then we take a look at their social emotional data, and the student is really struggling social emotionally. They're keeping it together academically, but eventually once we have all that social emotional data in there, we can see, well, maybe the student isn't doing as well as we think. Might be doing great, grade-wise, but they're struggling to get to school every day, and their attendance shows it, and their social emotional data shows it as well.
Okay, so once you've gathered that information, then what do you do with it? You say, okay, we've found a weak spot, or maybe a strong spot. Now what's the next steps? What's expected?
It would be teams of teachers meeting. We have the BBST as one group that meet regularly, so we're hoping that they are using this data to bring forward to the BBST meetings. Same thing with school counselors. If a student has that, strong academics but is struggling in the social emotional, maybe the counselors are reaching out not only to the student but to the families. So we're hoping that that communication among the teams of teachers as well as teachers or counselors with students.
Sorry, just trying to get like a little bit more for the families. Yeah, for the families that are listening to this right now. This all just seems kind of up in the air, but I think giving someone an example, like families have a child and maybe they're doing great. And they're saying, now how can this EduClimber help my student in the future? Or my student isn't doing great.
Right.
What is this going to do for us? What is this going to do for my child? That's what I want to know.
Okay.
The administration, we've got this, we've done all of this, and we're going to get all this great information, but how exactly is this really going to help the kids?
We can actually take a look right down to the standards, too. So if students may be above grade level, it looks like across the board or overall, we might find that there are certain standards within the assessments that they're struggling with, even students who are at an above grade level. So then teachers can take a look at those and work with students in small groups to raise them up. We might also see that students are above grade level and need more of a challenge. Teachers can see that as well. So I know at the elementary level, the focus is small groups. They can use this information to create their small groups within their classrooms to target those specific skills or areas that students need.
Okay, so Dr. Bayet, is there like systems in place now to say, okay, now we've got the data,
Right.
we've all put it together, now we're going to implement?
So right now, there's one group of students where a parent can have detailed, specific data and information. Child on an IEP. They've been assessed. We have other scores. We have other information. We have doctors. We have neuropsychs, and so on and so forth. What happens to everyone else? The future is an ILP, an individual learning plan for every student. Every student has a plan, and you take a look at MyCap and what we're trying to do there, like it or not, because that's what the state's using, there's others out there. What's the goal behind there? It's what are students interested in, how are they doing in school, do they come to school, what do they want to do when they grow up, all of that, early college, not early college, college, not college, career, whatever. I think the goal here is long-term, you're looking at an individual learning plan. When you're talking in 5th grade to a teacher about why the student isn't doing as well, you're the only person as a parent who has information from what happened in 1st grade. My teacher doesn't, right?
They can't access that?
No, they don't have the right to access that.
Oh, wow.
And so we have to get it from you. When we go into this type of information, what we're basically saying is that there's no longer teacher names and all of that, but hey, in 1st grade, Johnny did struggle with X. And here we are again, we're struggling with it again. Why? I can give you another big one that's important long-term. Really balancing our classes grounded on data, right? So if you have 24 cherubs in front of you and you're in a heterogeneous group, middle school classroom of ELA, you're really saying, hey, this is a really good balanced class. I got an X percentage of kids who are really good at Y. I have a group of kids that are not as strong at Y, but they're really good at X. And now you have this fairer distribution, if you will, within a heterogeneous grouping classroom, instead of what we see a lot of in public education, which is these extreme high lows that take place because of schedules. I think the last one that is of interest, maybe just at the superintendent level, is truly, after 5 years, if you continue to have the same problems, you've got a district problem. I would actually say after 3 years. I don't think it takes 5, but you got a true district problem. Is the curriculum the right curriculum? We can have a huge debate about the curriculum right now in this district, tomorrow morning, if you'd like to, over coffee. I mean, we have some real interesting data that's showing us where we have bought into the curriculum and are doing it with integrity, and then areas where we're not. And clearly, the data that we're seeing and the standards that I just saw today shows us that. Now the question becomes, if you're doing that over 3, 4, 5 years as a district, you have to say to yourself, we have to have a moment to really discuss implementation, turnover in staff. Let's say all of a sudden 20 teachers leave in the elementary grades. None of them have been trained in your literacy program that you implemented 3 years ago. That's going to have a potential drop in outcomes. So at the district level, it has that type of information that we can utilize. This is not an I gotcha. I want to be really simple. This is not an I gotcha, and anybody who says that is truly not listening or wanting to have us continuously improve, which is what we do every day as educators, continuously improve. It is truly being informed through data to make better decisions about how kids learn. So we're going to have a lot of discussions about that over the next few years.
And I actually sat down to add to your last point. This allows us to look at classroom data, building data, and district data to inform the curriculum and instruction. So it's a snapshot of a student in time. It cross-correlates all the different information, but it also tells us where the curriculum's at, where we might want to go back and take a look, make adjustments. We might want to look at our programs. We might look at implementation of programs. We might look at instruction. The other thing, which came up today in a discussion I had with one of our curriculum team, in putting in the coaching model, a teacher could look at their data, look at a specific strand or activity or a component of the curriculum, say, I want to work on this, and then work with an instructional coach to go after it. So the timing of bringing that program online and this software system to look at the data, it's a great convergence. It's a confluence of two things that can support each other. So the timing of this software, along with the coaching model, it's remarkable. And also, by the way, this program does have a parent portal and a student portal. So that would come later on once the data is completely clean and we're doing all of our draws, both mechanized and automatic, as well as pulling specific data that we have to import manually. So, yep.
Karen, any more questions? Lindsay, do you have any questions? I did have one question that I know is going to come up in conversations with parents, which is concerning data, the privacy of student data. And just, could you just give a quick overview to parents to reassure them that like there's going to be some privacy protection, like,
Yes,
you know, what are the safety protocols?
Teachers can only see the students that are on their class roster. That's one. So teachers don't have access to every single student in the building or in the district. Only district admin have access to the district. Building principals only have access to the students that are in front of them.
One of the reasons we went with this product is because this product, through the company, already meets both the state and federal guidelines for student privacy. There are other options for other companies. Some of them won't even sign off on it. But we're working towards only companies that will sign off that they are not in any way, shape, or form utilizing this data for marketing, public relations, or any other stuff.
Thank you. Any other questions for now? I mean, we could
have one more question.
Oh, sure. Yes.
Thank you for that. An educator can look at their class. Then I have the other question is, there must be a portal access for someone else to compare classes. Otherwise, that educator is just stuck in their own class.
I have access to that.
Yes.
Principals will have access to that. Central office administrators, especially those that are responsible for direct supervision and observation, will have that access as well.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the presentation. A lot to think about. So, yeah, if we have any more questions, we can always pass them on to Dr. Baeta.
And feel free to, and yeah, just CC me on it so I know what's going on, but feel free to directly email Diane with those questions and we'll get you answers. We have a few that we'll get back to you with from tonight.
Great, thank you. All right, so moving on to unfinished business. I just wanted to note FY25 special town meeting articles. We're presenting those 4 articles on next week, the 18th and 20th. So good luck to us. Anything else on those? I think we're all
Those
set.
are currently all positive votes.
Yes.
And so I don't see a big issue, but of course, town meeting is town meeting. So, but we did get support from the Finance Committee.
Yes. Just an update on some prior town meeting articles that we had. Ms. Perkins, did you want to update us?
Actually, it's
Mr. Rigo.
going to be Mr. Rigo,
Sorry,
if you don't mind.
Mr. Rigo. I was going to update us on a couple of prior town meeting articles just as. Don't forget that button, I think.
Okay, thank you. So just some updates on 2 of the prior articles, the Gibbon Swing and the Hanson Playground. For the Gibbon Swing, the swing has been ordered. There is a 26-week lead time on the manufacturing of the swing. We're looking at a spring time to have the project completed. Once we get the swing, it'll take about 3 to 4 weeks to complete the job. The reason why there's a 26-week lead time on all playground equipment is basically supply and demand. Since COVID, that industry has taken off. So it just basically, it's one of the hottest industries. If you talk to anybody there, it's just sell, sell, sell. So that's why there's a 26-week lead time on that. Hanson Playground. So to start off, there were 3 playground designs that were originally provided by Emmy O'Brien, which is the company that is working with us on the playgrounds. The designs were reviewed by the Hanson principal, the Director of Health and Services, and myself. The design equipment that was chosen was based on what would be inclusive and safe for our students. Accessibility, sensory pieces were a very big, important design for us. The current design that we selected meets the minimum ADA accessibility requirements by the state. There's also multiple sensory pieces that were selected for all types of students. The color palette actually went up to vote by students and parents. There were, I believe, 5 originally that sent out, and then as of this morning, the final vote was this blue, light blue combo that was approved. Once again, on this one, there's a 26-week lead time on the equipment. Now, the next steps is the drainage work that is needed at the school. That is something that is unique to this project as opposed to the Gibbons. DRA, which is a school architect, is currently reviewing the playground design that we gave them. We're still in the early stages of that process. Meetings are going to have to be held between the school, Emmy O'Brien, and DRA to make sure we're all on the same page. Everybody's looking at everything correctly and making sure that we're following the correct process and everything and all the guidelines. If everything goes according to plan, and the drainage work should start in the spring of 2025. The time to do the drainage work is still to be determined based on what is needed. After the drainage is complete, the installation is expected to take 4 to 5 weeks due to the size of the playground. So according to those timelines, we should have the playground ready for start at before the start of the school year. So which is a good way to start the new year.
One of the critical pieces for those of you that have been up to the Hanson that you'll notice is this drainage piece, and it's a major piece of the project. But we're also trying to do it right the first time up there. And if you remember that area where the current drainage is, it's also where we have a parking lot, which was not part of the project. It's just a gravel lot. I think we'll probably have some further discussions about ending up adding to that, maybe as a future capital plan or an opportunity, maybe working with the town if there's some leftover pavement and all of that stuff, because it's it's a big project up there, and we want to make sure that that drainage is doing what it's supposed to be doing. Because when it rains up there, it gets really soggy for those who, like myself, who use that area. So just wanted to let you know.
Yeah, the drainage piece is probably going to be the more challenging piece to figure out in trying to come up with the correct design plan that doesn't interfere with the playground. The design of the playground, we have all the pieces in place, but there might be some shifting of pieces based on how the piping underneath for the drainage looks and everything like that. So that's why there's not a full finalization on that design, because it could be some movement a little bit here and there. But as far as the pieces are concerned, that's pretty much set. So, any questions? Armando?
Timetable, please.
If everything goes according to plan, it should be ready by the end of the start of the school year. So next school year, 2025.
So the project will probably start in the
Spring, yeah, spring.
For the
So
summer.
there's the drainage piece that needs to get done. Once that gets done, it's 4 to 5 weeks for the playground to get installed.
Okay, so there'll be a loss of the one playground for the summer.
Yeah,
It
yes,
won't be in use.
yes. Yep, for the Hanson. But there's no students? I don't think there's any programs at...
It's not overly utilized in the summer as much as it is during the school year, that's a fact. But the concern is that once any type of drainage work starts, we're probably going to have to shut down that playground anyways because of safety, and that could include that, we're working with the company to take everything out of there. In other words, remove the current playground so that if we have holes and everything else around and it's all fenced in, people know that they're not tempted to climb over fences to go onto the playground. So.
Question, Karen? Yes.
Hey, I know I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but I just wanted to ask one question and verify one thing. So will this affect the basketball courts at all? Because I know that they are used fairly often. So I know the playground is next to the basketball courts at the Hanson.
The basketball courts should not be impacted. The only concern for impact we would have would be a hiccup on the drainage.
Okay. All right. Then my other, not a question, but just a verification that if we do have to move forward with modulars, I just wanted to verify for people listening, if we have to go modulars at the Hanson School, we're not going to put it in this new playground. And we're not going to be ripping out the brand-new playground to put a modular there. It is in a separate spot, correct?
It's on the Central Street. Is it Central or Canton? Central Street. It's on the Central Street side is where the tentative modulars would go.
So that's basically where the cafeteria crew and supplies enter.
Correct.
So it's not anywhere near the playground. So I just wanted to clarify that we will not be, in a couple of years, ripping up a brand-new playground.
Always good to clarify. I had a question. If we had, the students, our Student Advisory Council and the Student Council were huge proponents of this, and actually the reason that this whole project came into fruition. And are there opportunities for our high school students to continue to be involved in this project as it moves forward, or is it pretty much out of?
Well, I think it's pretty much out now, where especially we had the Hanson schools, the students and the parents vote on the colors and everything like that. But they're a big reason why this project happened. They were pushing for it, and it was much needed, a much needed project. And I think it's great for the school and great for the community to have this. So we thank you for this.
I think, too, don't forget that I think some of those students are now graduates of
Yes.
Stoughton High School, if I remember correctly from the names off the top of my head. But that doesn't mean when the time to celebrate comes that those students shouldn't be part of the celebration. They waited way too long for it to go. It got behind schedule. They were gone, but it was their initiative and support that got this moved forward. So we will absolutely make sure when the time comes to cut the ribbons and celebrate it, that those families and students are invited back.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Any other questions on these form articles? All right. Thank you very much. Moving on to the budget planning process.
If I may.
Sure.
So through you, Madam Chair, and as Heidi comes up, out of the making sure that the process works, I want us to keep this at 10,000 feet because the working group hasn't really been able to provide feedback not only to me and the business office, but also to you as a group of 5. So this is more informational right now, a starting point. It's not an end of anything. We'll turn it over. We have now scheduled a 2-hour block of time next Tuesday. We're going to work in between the town meetings and really then be able at the next meeting to come back with more concretes for the entire committee to then have their input to the chair, make final changes, and then the final votes.
Can we make watermark these preliminary or draft or something like that? Because this is publishable to the entire community, and we want to be able to let them know that.
We will make sure we add that language to it.
Please.
We'll have it as a working draft.
That was what I was going to say, is that this is all just very much like a high-level draft at this point. I did want to
We
know.
don't want to get into this.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. We just don't want to get into situations like we had last year. So we're very aware of that internally.
Right. I do want to note, we had the timeline that Ms. Perkins presented last time. On this, the timeline that was presented last time, the recommended budget was to be presented next week on November 19th, but that's when the budget working group is going to meet. The school committee is not going to meet, so that would be potentially moved to December 3rd.
I would like the committee to consider, Madam Chair, through you, that we have the 3rd and the 10th.
Yes.
As I know it's back-to-back weeks. I'm trying to stay away from the 17th, but if we had to do the 17th, it would be solely as a last. We are required to send the budget up by the 31st. So at worst, what would happen is the 17th, we would have a final working document, but we'd already, I'm hoping by the 10th, have your vote.
Correct. So my thought was that on the 3rd, we would have the presentation from the budget working group, have some discussion, debate, and then on the 10th, have the public hearing and actually hold the vote. So keeping with our kind of our mode of operating of where we present one week and then wait to vote on the next. So that was my thought for that. So that would be the one difference on the timeline, was to have, instead of having the 19th, have that be the 3rd, but then keep that 10th for the public hearing and the vote.
I don't have my calendar, so I have no idea. So, okay.
It gives us a
Go
few
with the
extra
flow.
days on one side. 2, it allows for the working group to do its thoughts and ideas. 3, it gets it back to you. We can turn around the working group comments, suggestions, ideas much quicker that way. And then lastly, utilize the time on our own between leaving for Thanksgiving and Thanksgiving break and coming back for more questions, ideas, and so on and so forth. I mean, as we said, we don't want to make the mistake we did last year. We promised each other we wouldn't, which is to have a school committee meeting the week of Thanksgiving. We don't want to do that. But that doesn't mean that we, as a team, won't be doing some stuff that week and the week after, and then we have the 3rd and the 10th. That still gives us, literally 21 days from when it's due, and we would want to try to get out a printed copy to the select board and finance committee chair by the time we leave on the 20th of December, so that we're now working on maybe that entire packet, but they have at least the line item budget, and then we can give them all that secondary information after that if needed, if that makes sense.
So if I could just say that as we work through this and have some discussion, maybe some emails with the chair or something like that to figure out the times and the dates, because I think we all have to look at everything we have, who's available when, et cetera. But going back to the point, in this memo that goes with what's coming tonight, it does say that this is a draft too, so that's was made clear in here as well. So I do want to point that out. And then separately, obviously the superintendent's recommended budget is usually put together first, and then a working group might tweak some things. So how we roll those out in the order that has to be, we'll be putting together, probably a list of ideas, which I've seen in the past that, was done in the school, of ideas that that we can see potentially that could be tweaked. To try and get to whatever number it is that the school committee eventually decides to put forth as the school committee's recommended budget. So it is a very short timeline, so it is going to move pretty quickly. But for tonight, excuse me, I have a froggy throat. Again, this is just really draft, and we are working on collating so we did this, one 1 week earlier than we had initially planned to say at the last meeting, the salaries were presented. This is the expense budget. This is, as mentioned in the memo, we just gave the guidance for everybody to go up 2% on their overall budget in any lines that they want. That's always up to the principal or the department head to decide where they're spending their money. And they did that. But the issue is, we had a 3.8% guidance from the town of what we could come in at. And with the salaries that we presented last time, and this very modest increase of 2% on the overall budget, other than, say, sped, out of district tuition, stuff like that, you have to go above the 2%. You have to go with what it is with the mandate. We are coming in at $2.1 million over that 3.8% guidance. And I did list in here what the assumptions were in this budget. So just as a quick reminder, and for people at home too that might have missed before, we have a number of positions that this year and last year were out of shelter funds. We do not know what's going to happen with shelter funds for next year. So none of those positions are in here. You're talking the 13 paras, a nurse, and some other positions. Some of them are directly related to if there's a shelter or there isn't a shelter. So depending on everything that's happening next year, would determine if all of those positions would be needed to be put in, or they don't all need to be needed to be put in. So we don't know yet.
Can we just hold there for a second?
Sure.
Because I know what's going to happen tomorrow morning if I don't say this. Any mentions of positions and cuts does not mean anything is final, and that it in fact is those positions. The superintendent's recommended budget may say that X is in the budget as his recommendation and Y is out of the budget. I just want to be clear, because the moment people start thinking about shelter funds and those were used, but they may not be available next year, it all blows up, and it's November 12th. Way too early for my staff and team to be worried about what that means. I just want to be very cautious about that, because the priorities are changing daily in terms of what we're seeing in classroom needs, building needs, supports, so on and so on. So we may have to have those difficult conversations of what was on the table last year isn't on the table this year, something else is, because things have changed, i.e. class size, i.e. mandates. So I just want to be very, very, very clear so that we don't end up with a lot of people running around tomorrow with a head cut off saying, I heard that such and such positions are already cut for next year. That is not a factual piece of information at this time.
Yes, I'm sorry, I should have been more clear on that. We have discussed publicly before which positions were funded with shelter funds, so it's really just stating those are the positions that are shelter funded, and this budget is assuming that we would continue to have shelter funds. We said this actually at last month's meeting as well, and if shelter funding does not come forward, that there would be Chapter 70 SOA money coming forward in its place. So right now, there's none of that's been changed. There is nothing that's been taken out of the budget. They were shelter funded. It's still making that assumption that shelter or SOA would be the funding. That's really the point that making here. So nonetheless, we are $2.1 million over. And that's without any added positions. As we know, the enrollment likely will grow, and that may mean that we need to add some more classroom teachers. Those are not in the budget right now. The additional bus that was added this year is not in the budget right now. That would have to be added into the budget. So, I'm sorry, too, for my voice being so gruff right now, froggy. So there's a number of things that are listed in here that are the assumptions of what would have to happen, and reminding that we do have to go out on the bus bid, and that we've budgeted 15% plus the 2% inflation factor on that. So that's basically what we're looking at, is assuming all the things that were not funded with operating funds stays that way, assuming that we are not keeping the extra bus right now. This is not meaning that you've made any decisions or that anybody has. That's what's in these numbers. And, assuming and hoping that some sort of funding comes through that after the first of the year that we can look at to see how we can supplement what the 3.8 to get to where we want to go. Sorry. So that's basically, this is a public document if anybody wants to read it. It just says those things of what's in and what's not in there at this time. And then together, that's really where we're at. And I just want to point out, too, that, as I said, there's a few mandated things in here, especially special education, whether it's transportation or OOD tuition, et cetera. Those are what they are. And as I mentioned, at the last meeting, we had before that some of the grant funding offset salaries. We took that out to save on the MTRS. So you'll see here that we did incorporate, as we said last time on the salaries, $150,000 in turnover savings. I would not go any higher on that because even if you have a few more retirements, say, you're always going to have times through the year when someone is out and they are being paid with their sick time, and you have a long-term sub-in that is not budgeted that you are also paying. So you can't say those, you have savings from turnover and those are concrete savings to be used. That means conservatively 3. If we happen to learn of a few more, my own personal recommendation is to not budget any more than that for turnover because it's going to get used up by unanticipated coverage when we have people out and have to bring in substitutes. So that's just, something that we'll talk through when we meet with the working group. But if anybody was questioning if we had any more, I don't have any more information about retirements yet in any case. So that's really where we're at. And I did also want to point out, because if somebody were to look at, say, the elementary art lines, I'll just use that because it's going to look significantly off. 2 things I want to point out is that last year we had significant cuts to make this year's budget, and those are now embedded. That became the base. So when we cut the budget last year to come up with this year's budget, all the budget makers have less money in their expense lines than they had before. And now that's their new base. It's a permanent cut. And so we're adding 2% onto the cut of this year. It's not restoring. Secondly, there was a couple of system-wide or school-wide accounts. One of them happened to be elementary art. Elementary music is another one. I'm disaggregating that and actually putting that into the schools. You'll see it, so it's going to look like it went up wildly this year because it was pulled out of another account. And we are continuing to talk with the elementary principals about how they really want to reallocate that. So you might see one right now that looks high, very high, compared to another elementary because one principal might have already sort of worked with their allocation. But we did let them know that there needs to be parity. So art will be the same amount per student in each school as every other school. So that's just a small adjustments that we're going to be working on going forward. We're already having discussion on. So I didn't want anybody to think we were suddenly adding, a lot of money into a specific area and looking like it was being favored or something else. That's really just disaggregating to be more transparent to the public. It also makes it easier for the principals and everybody else to know what's really in their budget. And why did we have that? We used to have, as you know, say when John Manch was here, he was over a district-wide budget for the arts, and we don't have that now. We have 3 levels of people, one at each level, that's looking at say all the elementary and somebody else looking at middle school and the department head looking at the high school. So we don't have one person over a district-wide budget anymore. It really needs to go into the school budget where it is. It's only a couple places that we had that before.
A couple of thoughts.
Really
so,
apologize.
number one, just today, a meeting with the chair and the vice chair, as we do at least every other week. And this isn't Heidi's fault. Heidi and I just haven't had a lot of time to catch up. When we look at assumptions, we have to really think of that word in a couple of different ways, right? I'm very clear that the issue of transportation is an incredibly important one to the school committee. And so I know, and I was just telling these folks over here, that as we come to the meeting next week, some of those assumptions of what you have in your memo draft today, and I'm sorry it's not watermarked, that's also something we should have thought of and we just didn't, just to make sure that people don't think we have different iterations of the budget. It's just a draft, and we're working off of the draft, not creating more drafts, if you will, or options. There's no such thing. But we have areas where we've made savings and cuts and so on and so forth that we are going to be taking a look at things like I'll give you the most controversial one right now. The late bus for sports is in the transportation line item revolving account. If we were using that this year, there is no revolving account for next year for it, as one example. So we have to make the assumption it's not budgeted, or the assumption we are going to budget and something else is coming out. We're going to also give you, and this is what I've been informed, here's the 3.8, but also here's the priorities that are left outside of that need to be met. Why do we do that? We need to tell the picture that if, in fact, funding through SOA is above and beyond, or grants, or a wonderful gift from a multimillionaire, that this is where the school committee has already voted it's going to be prioritized. It's not something we're going to make up later. It's something we're stating now as a fact. So that when we use the word cut, our budget will go up X percent. That's a fact. It'll be more than the current year. But if that more doesn't meet what you had, then you have to create your list of what you didn't have and prioritize it. That's part one. Part two, we don't really have a solid grasp yet on retirements, and we have some because there's some deadlines. I think it's November 1st, if I remember correctly. We just haven't really gone through it all, and we're always going to have surprises that take place. The last part is through Jonathan reminding me on a pretty regular basis, I have a call into a contact at DESE around what does this SOA potentially look like? There's no number out there yet, but what is the cutoff going to be for the low income number? Right? Is it going to move from just under 50%? Was it 40?
So we're at 49.6.
Yeah, right.
If we go to 54, we
Right.
drop a decile to 10.
Right. So that is a big positive drop for Stoughton Public Schools. And I'll give you an example. If the governor comes in with an inflation rate that is not a copy of last year's 1.9%, which I thought was just not good. I'm sorry? Yeah. And you compared it to the prior years, which came in at under the maximum, which is 4.5. Maximum by statute is 4.5. We received $1,339 per student more than the prior fiscal year. Last year, we received $531. And that's just a mathematical equation of inflation and the per pupil that the numbers add up to. That drop for us could give us another $300 to $400 per student. That's a significant opportunity to make up that laundry list of more personnel cuts than you've seen in the past, because you're already $1.8 million in the hole in materials, supplies, and so on and so forth. So that's one part. The other part is we have no control around these bids for transportation. This has been an ongoing debate since I was a school committee member, 1998 to 04, that you don't get any bids. You get plenty of visitors, but you only get one bid. And that's fine. Very happy with the company I'm with. Have no complaints. But that's the reason why we have this public bidding process, is that so that we can get the best price in the public area. And the numbers that are out there today, not only from the business office, but I can tell you from the superintendents down at the conference, we were talking about this at one of the breakout sessions, the numbers that we're seeing are really, really difficult numbers. And so where do you take to pay for that $300,000 increase? Because you were counting on 5% on a good year, 7% on a good year. If it's 15 or 20, that's a deal breaker. Just to give you a sense of some of that. Today I met with the special education department, the leadership, and really took a look at some ideas that I'm going to be having as this budget process is going through, around really looking at funding positions that will actually not only fund themselves, but potentially bring in more money than funding themselves. We need to do a more targeted attack on our internal circuit breaker. We don't spend a lot of time on it, as much as I think we should.
So these are some of the ideas that we're going to be looking at going forward. And then lastly, we're going to try, as I always do as superintendent, and that is protect the classroom as best as we can. But there are going to be some difficult decisions ahead. But we need to make sure that we are creating our master list based on that funding coming through. And we'll know that funding literally January 22nd, 23rd, 24th, right around those 3 days is when we get that information. By then, our budget's done, but our priorities aren't. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and if I could add on to that, when I put out the budget templates to all the budget makers, I actually added a tab this year that they didn't have in the past, where we basically said, please put down all of your needs, don't hold back, whatever it is. A lot of it's personnel that they've asked for, but some of it's some other things. And that is what's going to make up that list. We'll have a few other things to add. But essentially, we've captured from all the principals and directors, what is it that is not funded that you really feel we need and why. So that list will be made public. And as Dr. White said, we talked about prioritizing that list, and obviously some things can trump that. So if we all of a sudden need another classroom teacher, that has to come first. There's going to be certain things that if there's more sped placements throughout this year that ups what this OOD is, there's certain things that are going to have to be put first. But then we will have a prioritized list that the district will put forward in the working group and saying this is really what we vetted, what some of these things have to happen, some of these things are what they desperately need or have asked for many years. But it will be made public. Here's the entire list, and here's the order that we anticipate that we would fund if there's additional funds. But I think it's also really good and important to be transparent for the public to also see, and here's all the things that we can't fund, regardless of maybe SOA or whatever else, they're falling to the bottom. And in my own experience in other districts, we would then take what's left that didn't get funded, and that would just be put right back onto the list for next year, and any new things go on there. So it's not forgotten. We are hearing people, we're listening to them, and we're letting the public know that, it's not that we wouldn't want to do all of those things, but the funding only goes to however far down on the list. So that's really what we're looking to prepare before we meet with the working group next week, is to sit down and look at that list and have something ready for that as well.
Any questions right now?
I just want to clarify and kind of say a couple things back to make sure we're hearing. This is the very first draft of a superintendent's recommendation of the school committee budget. So this is not anything close to final. We are working backwards from a 3.8% increase. This is over that, but we're going to go through that and break out that list of things that we would like to prioritize and add back in addition to the stuff that principals have put in that
one of five steps.
Wish list.
This is step 1 out of 5.
So we've got some work to do ahead of it, and just I know you've said all this, I just want to make sure I want to underline it.
If I could restate that back, it's all the staffing that we have in place right now, assuming that everything stays exactly the same, including the funding sources, with their contractual increases. And then additionally, the budgets that everybody has right now with a 2% increase, which may be, within lines. And I do want to add too, just for everybody that might look at that from home, we had a budget freeze last year. So while it may look that somebody, I'll just use $100 and they spent $50, it's because we had a budget freeze before Christmas last year. So I just want people to keep that in mind when they're looking at it. It doesn't mean that that's all they need. It means that certain things were done differently last year.
Okay. I think that is helpful. Thank you both for breaking it down. Yeah, no, we got some work ahead of us on Tuesday. I'm excited.
I would ask if you had any individual questions on the budget to send them to Dr. Baeta so we avoid open meeting law by sending them to the working group. So,
and the working group will have those questions so that we can, as a team, give the answers back. And we'll do that. We'll do the answers through the chair.
Okay. Sounds good.
That makes sense.
Can I just ask one thing?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So I just want to make sure that I understood this, that the town asked us to keep within a 3.8% increase. That came from the select board? Is that what I understand?
That's the select board chair and the town manager's comments that they were asking the departments to come in at 3.8%.
Okay, is that definitive, we have to stay within 3.8? Is that like a hard, we
Yeah.
can't go over that, even though we might? So maybe I'm just getting it wrong. It sounds like 3.8 brought us up short by $2 million.
Right.
I am understanding that correct, that if we follow the guidelines that the select board has asked us to, we are going to cut an already cut budget by $2 million.
When you look at the math, that's exactly the comment. So you are an independent elected board. However, the way that the process usually works is there is a number, people try to come in within that number, and then there's all these other things. Unfortunately, as I think I've beaten the horse, sorry to say, because I do like horses, our town charter requires the best guess information of money, revenue that's going to come in before the revenue comes in for both the town and the schools, and specifically the schools, because it's a big chunk, when House 1 comes in. As I have stated, I believe that those dates should be moved in order for the Finance Committee, the Select Board, and the School Committee, as well as Town Manager and Superintendent, have better numbers to know what this would actually look like, part one. Part two, the formula for the school department is grounded on the 5th year, if I remember correctly, of the Student Opportunity Act. The Student Opportunity Act basically said, Stoughton, you have not gotten the fair amount of money from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts based on this new way of divvying up the money. And the example that I gave last year was my prior community got $104 per kid, we got $531. The year before that, my prior community got $60 per kid, Stoughton got $1,339 per student. Why? Because the formula plays in to the low income, high needs, special education, et cetera. That's the Student Opportunity Act. It's an opportunity for communities to get those one-time bumps over 7 years, 7 straight fiscal years, so that when the plane lands at the end of the 7 years, quote, you've been given that balanced opportunity to be able to have budgets that come within what would be your normal town opportunity to fund. Okay? Because if you didn't have the Student Opportunity Act, we wouldn't have been able to do what we did with healthcare, plus another $2 million that we had in operating budget on the school side. This is before me, but that's the history. Last year, we got, I believe it was, what was the total? 4 million, was that last year? What was the total increase last year?
From the Chapter 70?
Yeah.
Just away?
Well, what was that total budget increase last year?
I think it was a little bit over that. Yeah, it was
We were
total
7.1,
but
of
that was
which-
$2 million was like on top. You know,
Of-
they added whatever the percentage was plus $2 million flat.
It was 3% plus 2, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
something like that.
So, yes, to your question, that's exactly what's happening. We have to make these decisions. Now, the part that's always controversial is the Select Board is mandated to forward a balanced budget going forward. So the game becomes, and this is no disrespect to the town manager of the Select Board, the game becomes who says the budget's going to be balanced. The school committee, by saying 3.8 and we'll cut 2, but we'll prioritize for after we know what the funding is from the state, and then make an argument that those funds should come to the school side. And I believe we have the support that Chapter 70 money goes to the school department. At least that's what I've been told. But it's all about the dates and the factual information, and then the games begin, and causes a lot of, I think, too much stress. I know when I retire someday, as a resident of the town, what petition I'm moving forward. And I know I'm going to get support for it.
Yeah, we do anticipate Chapter 70 SOA funds potentially allowing us to have more than the 3.8. And the 3.8 was calculated based on Proposition 2.5, like what the levy is going to be, because we are not looking for an override, a budget override for just the operating budget. So there is a little bit of politics at play, but having that priority list allows us to argue that we need all of the additional Chapter S70 and SOA funds, and that we have very good reasons for them. We have clear demands for them. That's what the town's asked from us in the past, is to be able to lay out exactly what we're going to do with that additional funding.
So we're going to have to make some, I think he said, difficult decisions.
Yes.
But those decisions will be put on a list so that if we happen to get some more money, those things will come back in. Okay. But what if we've already cut, is there possible, the time has already passed, and it's already lost? The teacher is gone, or the program is gone?
We should know.
How fast does it, is it by January?
We would know before that.
We would know 3.8, and what's the difference in SOA, and what does that mean by no later than the end of January. Then it would be making an argument to keep that difference of the added SOA money. That's the process. If you're in a community that's only getting minimum student aid, $60 or $100, you're arguing about $70,000. So literally, it's not much of an argument. But it's my understanding that there are commitments to Chapter 70 belonging to the school department.
And just one more thing, again, on the staffing sheet that was presented at the last meeting, some of those offsets that are listed say shelter funding or SOA. So if the SOA comes in, but the shelter funding doesn't, then also what's listed on here as positions that are being offset would be part of that prioritization list as well, because we have to have some sort of funding, one or the other, and we don't know what's going to happen with the shelter fundings directly.
We do know one factual piece of shelter money. You're in the last year of it. So you're either getting it from September to December and then December to June this year, which will give you that little cushion, for lack of a better word, but you don't have that going forward. So what does that mean? That means you still have to make critical decisions about long-term fiscal planning, so you don't want to create a bigger cliff than the potential cliff you're going to have. So we have to be conservative on what we have and keep it, and then move things out and move things in based on the facts as we know them, especially in the areas of mandates. I'll leave it at that.
Anything else? To be continued. This is not the last.
Questions
Yes.
we're not asking tonight.
We're not asking specific questions, but if you do have specific questions about line items on the budget, send them to Dr. Bayetta, and the budget working group can get back to us. And general questions about the process. we can ask.
That watermark that's missing this is very much a draft of this is not even close, because I know where the draft shows questions of equity.
Who's on the budget committee?
That's Lindsley and Armando.
Yes.
It's the budget working group.
If it helps, I'm sorry. If it helps to explain, this is really just stating what is right now with an inflation factor or a contractual increase. There's been no discussion about any initiatives, things coming in, going out, or whatever. Zero. This is just saying, here's what we have with an inflation on the expenses or with a contractual increase, an increase on the staffing, for raises. It's very basic, just saying, here's what it would look like if we kept everything the same next year. There's been no further discussion, recommendations, or anything else. So just wanted to echo that. That's all this is at this point. So.
We still get plenty of time to have input, so don't worry.
We'll be looking to.
Yes. Moving on to the redistricting update. I'm going to do my reminder every meeting until this goes through. Redistricting is redrawing the boundary lines for who goes to which elementary school. We're redistricting regardless of the final decision for the South Elementary School building due to increased enrollment across the town. This will affect all elementary schools. The redistricting committee's first meeting is this Thursday, November 14th. It's in person. Is So it's been moved. Did you get the invite?
No.
I don't think we've gotten our formal invite, so if we could send out an
Well,
email.
then somebody missed you, because
Yes.
I will make sure that you do get it. I
What time would
apologize.
that be?
That's at 6 to 7:30.
6 to 7:30.
And it's here. It's the only required in-person meeting. And then we're moving to hybrid and virtual only, once a month. Because we know we have a lot of people that, through this time of year, are all over the place. So we'd rather be able to hold the meeting if we can than not, because we do have a posted agenda. We are keeping minutes. We are voting on minutes. And the first agenda, besides introductions on Thursday night, is choosing a vice chair and a recording secretary.
Yes. Yeah. I wanted to make sure you got that information because I wasn't
No,
quite sure. I had to double check
actually,
myself.
It was on my calendar. I think it was mentioned at the last meeting,
Yes.
so thank you. But a reminder is
Always good.
obviously
Thank you.
not
That
on my
makes me feel
radar.
better.
All right, moving on to the last kind of big topic of the evening is the South Elementary School modular classrooms. I know we got the information last week, our last meeting. Dr. Bader wasn't here to present it, but I turned it over to you to.
Yeah, so thank you, Madam Chair, and the members of the committee. Basically, what we did is we asked DRA to turn around if you will, a Plan B, because we are seriously hurting in terms of our classroom spaces. And I will tell you how much we're hurting by telling you, you may be looking at hopefully a vote for a new school and a positive vote, and still having temporary modulars at some of our elementary schools because there is no space. So that's one. So what we did is we took the idea of if we had to move 300 students from one building, redistrict the district and moving them, where would they go? Because that building's no longer in place. And so the idea became that the Gibbons and the Daw have the two biggest, if you will, geographic opportunities, and then the Hanson is the third. And to be quite honest, recently we don't have any models for that, but we've talked about the Wilkins as well, although that has more complicated issues, i.e. behind the building has limited space unless we're talking with the town about taking over some of that area. And in front of the building, it's even more limited, closer to the courthouse, and so on and so forth. But it requires that once you make that temporary, and these are temporary, not permanent, the cost goes up, and not really knowing to details, sewer connections. What we do know is a couple of questions that we have out to the town. One is, these cannot just be open. They have to be enclosed, connected, and if they are, the cost could now go up even more because fire code and ADA compliance has to be met in the building because you're now doing an addition, if you will. If not, and it can be enclosed, then fine. I think we'd have some ADA issues that the Commonwealth would have with us. But again, we have those questions out. It is a prevailing wage contract. It's a design fee. It's just a little. It's quicker. It's faster, and it's temporary. And by temporary, these have a lifespan of 10 years. They can go longer, but you have to spend some more funding to do that. And a perfect example is the temporary at the middle school were enclosed. They are enclosed with brick. Why? Because the bid came in lower than the cost. And so the decision at the time by Mr. Harding and Mr. Sano, the director of facilities and the superintendent, was, well, if we have the extra money, we could probably go further long-term if we brick them on the outside instead of the traditional non-brick temporary look. So what that also means is that all students are in play for redistricting because you're now cutting an entire side of town from being in their neighborhood school, and they're going to be shifting in so many different directions because you're not just cutting the town in one way. You're not just doing a label this way. You've now eliminated one side of the town, so you could be going to the Gibbons coming out of X school while you're going to the Daw coming out of X school. The last part of it is that these temporary numbers are basically a magnitude number. In other words, a starting point. We know that the number is higher. It's not reimbursable. The energy efficiency that you get with them is literally AC. If you know, energy efficiency in terms of you have to have AC. We will begin visiting sites in January and February. So any of you who, I hate to say these are probably school day time just because of the schedule of where we're going to try to visit, but one of the things we're going to try to do with the redistricting committee, and then eventually potentially a modular committee, is really, what does this really look like? Because the redistricting committee is going to be looking at this from two perspectives: a brand new school or modulars. One of the two has to give. There is no third option. The third option is, I don't know, I can't even say it because it's not appropriate. So the overall perspective of these modulars is literally a short-term solution, financially kicking everything down to even a higher cost, and a real implication for the O'Donnell Middle School. The implication is that the O'Donnell Middle School wouldn't probably be a statement of interest for another 12 to 15 years. You don't have 12 to 15 years unless you're willing to spend millions just in Band-Aids to that building. Think about that for a second. So financially, it's no longer $66 million. It's significantly more that you're asking of the taxpayers over the next 10 to 20 years. Significantly more. It's not financially feasible to do that. What is financially feasible is the intent of closing the South School, redistricting, building a new school, shutting down this building by moving the preschool and the administration to the Wilkins, and then literally 2 buildings are shut down. You're down to 6 buildings for the district. As much as I would like an alternative site and all that stuff, I think we're down to saying we're down to 6 buildings as a district. We're truly consolidating so that the taxpayers are not looking down the road to build new elementary schools. At worst, they'd be looking at the cost significantly after the middle school additions and renovations at probably 3 of our elementary schools. Now, we are also working through our energy efficient person for the town. It's a dual contract. We have a special contract with her where she's really taking a look at a number of grants to support some of our schools in terms of energy efficiency, i.e. the major need at the Wilkins is a brand new heating system and all of that stuff, and how do we do that? We're looking at it from a more of a different model than before, kind of a model where you're borrowing and it's kind of paying for itself in some ways, not all of it. It's actually something I've done before myself. And then lastly, you know, the one-time cost of an elementary school, shutting down 2 schools and redistricting is a financial plan that makes sense, recognizing that it has a cost. And oh, by the way, in your new South School, you're going to have to tweak in some things, because when you go out to bid, that one for $13 million could be actually more, and then that working group's going to have to. You can't go back for more money. You have to readjust your budget. Mondo.
Yes, a couple of things. When you visit the modules, can you please invite Mr. Cavey and Mr. Enochian to go with you?
Sure. Yep.
Please. And the second thing is that if you can list the schools and what their design capacity is and what the capacity is right now, what the forecast for the capacity in the next few years.
South School is 225, we're at 308, as an example. Yes, I can do that for you.
Please. I think that would be great for the public to see something like that.
Yep.
Real numbers.
So capacity versus actual.
And if you have any history, a few years of history, so just see the trend.
Well, I can tell you in general, it's trending up. But yes, I will do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can talk until we're red in the face, but unless people see it on paper,
Yeah, I agree.
it doesn't sink in.
Easy to do. Easy to do.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments about the modulars? No. Yeah, I just want to echo, I would love to see, I know that that working group from the town was going to put their own pro-con list together, but I think we need to have our own district pro-con list and show as at a snapshot kind of the total cost long-term, closing the South and relocating students to modulars, how that doesn't affect the Wilkins, what the potential cost to renovate the Wilkins would be if we had to keep that online and renovate, expand it. If we had to keep the Jones in play, I know our facilities master plan in 2023 estimated a renovation of the Jones would be over $16 million, and it would be at least $25 million to replace this building. That's potentially gone up since then, and the Jones is not reimbursable. It's not an MSBA project because they do not do pre-K and administrative buildings. So I think that's important for people to have. Doing ad reno to the south means we would still have to go through this whole process and then undo that process. And their ad reno costs, the predictions from our preferred schematic report were almost $79 million for additional renovation for that. But then compare the new consolidated school, how it's going to end up saving us because we're going to be able to get the grant to extend that Wilkins life with that new HVAC system. Hopefully, maybe closing down 2 buildings, like the savings for that. So if we could have some sort of, and also the educational cost, what does it mean to have buildings where we have consolidate, where, our specialist teachers aren't traveling quite as much. We have more resources for our special education and EL students versus these modular classrooms where we're going to have, the cost for maybe having a 4th lunch at the elementary school, the additional cost for playground monitors because we're going to lose playground space. And, if there's a way we can do like a list of some basic pro and cons, just to have handouts for the roadshow, for the building committee, but even for, town meeting and that sort of thing, because I think that would be really helpful for people to have a kind of a snapshot of like, this looks cheaper at first, like it's only $22 million, but there's real significant long-term costs for the district versus that new consolidated school where we had $66 million from the town. It is a bigger cost up front, but long-term, there are just significant savings, and just kind of put some numbers in front of people and also bring up some points for parents, because, that was when it's so effective at back to school night, is having parents imagine having an extra 100 students walk through the Gibbons or whatever school that got their attention. So I think, parents want to know kind of what is this going to do and how is this going to affect their students. So I think that would be really helpful to have that information. Anything else on those? I know this is getting a lot of play, so people are definitely starting to pay some attention. It's helpful to have the key numbers for this. Moving on to the elementary school building committee update and responsibilities. I want to note that the October's meeting was on Wednesday, October 23rd, and they had the proposal for the modulars. DRA actually presented the modular proposal, so if people want to sort of dig into kind of what DRA have the architects walk through what it means, what is involved in preparing the site for it, what is involved in the modulars, what are the different spaces that they're proposing to be added onto, what are some of the concerns about the financing, the educational issues. That's kind of a good meeting to go through and watch that piece there. There was supposed to be a building committee meeting tomorrow. That's going to be rescheduled for a later date, so that will not be happening tomorrow. So anything else on elementary school building committee? All right, moving on, I'd like to get to acceptance of minutes. Are there any edits for the minutes? I know I have a couple, but I'll go ahead. Okay. Ms. Anderson, were you at our last meeting? No. Okay, so that's what it is, that Ms. Anderson was not in attendance last meeting. We missed you. I had a few. One was on page 3. I was going to ask Ms. Perkins for kind of help with rewording this at the top paragraph. I have a question about the sentence, the money coming in until December is left over from the previous school year. Is there a better way to word that?
So, yes.
Yeah.
The sentence before that.
Okay.
I think that
Sure.
budget was offset, anticipating, I would say anticipating, it's $150,000 in staff turnover.
Okay.
So we want to change that number. And then the sentence that you just referred to, basically, I'll just restate it without reading it. Right now, the shelter funding that we are receiving now through December is what the state had remaining from their FY '24 shelter budget, the state budget. So it's FY '24 money that we're voting for shelter funding that they are going to be giving us and other districts for the period of September to December of this year.
Okay.
There has been zero added to the state budget as of the last we were notified for any funding in FY '25. And we were waiting for I'm just putting the whole thing in how we word it is, but we're waiting to see what the governor does in the supplemental budget before we can get an answer if there will be funding as we decide.
Okay. So,
Put that together.
all right, okay. So just for our recording secretary, so the budget was the second, or the sentence at the top, the budget was offset anticipating $150,000 in staff turnover retirements. And we're changing the sentence, the money coming in to the shelter funding we are receiving through December is left over from the state FY '24 budget for the period of September through December. Right now, nothing has been added to the budget for the remainder of the school year.
We have not been notified.
Okay, we have not been notified.
From the state.
Of any funding from the state in the state's FY '25 budget.
Okay, so we have not been notified of any funding from the state in the state's FY '25 budget. Okay. All right, just so that's clear for the record. All right. And then under D2, the fourth line, I just want to add that most of the elementary schools built in the past several years have been for about 600 students because some of the middle and high school students, the buildings have been significantly larger. So just clarify that that was for elementary. And then under correspondence, I just wanted to correct the spelling of Mr. Cancellari's name. That could just be because I'm not pronouncing it clearly, but it should be Cancelliri, and it appears twice there.
That's why we say Mr. Cease him and Mr. Colantoni.
Right.
He's easier to spell out.
I know. Any other? Yeah. Any other amendments? All right.
I move that we approve the minutes for October 22nd as amended.
All right. So the motion was made by Lindsay. Do I have a second? Seconded by Chris. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. That's been carried 5-0. And I want to turn it over to Lindsay and Armando for a brief moment to report back on the annual conference, the MASC conference. How was it?
It was awesome. So Armando and I were at the conference from Wednesday last week through Saturday morning. Dr. Bayetta was there for parts of it as well as the schedule allowed. And I think, I know we sort of divided and conquered a lot of the sessions so that we all got to get different perspectives on different parts. My intention was to type up my notes and share them with everybody for today. That did not happen, but it will happen. So I just didn't have it ready for today. So I'll share that with everybody. But I went to some sessions about communicating with the public, district strategic planning, grounded in like a vision of the graduate, which our district has done recently. Really interesting session on special education financing, which I think Dr. Bayetta, you alluded to some of the things that we got out of that session. Just like really, I was like, I didn't expect to get this excited about financing, but here we are. Some budget best practices, and there was a session, just obviously it's still very, very early, and last week was even earlier, but just some initial thinking about what the impacts of the national election last week are going to be on local education systems. So again, obviously very, very early there, but like some initial thinking around what could happen, as well as some of the initial thinking around the impacts of question 2. So I will again, type up my notes and share them with everybody, but I don't know, Armando, do you want to add anything to that?
Oh, yes. It was an excellent experience, and the reason I say that is because I've learned a lot, and I really think that each and every single school committee member should attend. It'll make us a lot more efficient, a lot more knowledgeable, and we won't drive these guys nuts with our comments or questions that just doesn't make sense to them. I really hope we can find the money in the budget to allow each member. I wouldn't recommend the first year if you come in and you don't have an education background, because you'll be lost there.
It's a lot of
Yeah. Right.
educational terminology.
But by the
acronym.
yeah, by the second year, I think that's where anyone can get a great deal of benefit from it. And there were a couple of things. I attended a crisis communication. And one of the things I really liked about that is that they said if you're communicating throughout the school year, they have a 95-5 rule. 95% of the communication to the public should be positive. You're going to get the 5% no matter what. So if we can obtain the 95 or use the 95-5 rule, I think we'll be able to communicate better to the general public. One of the things I was really concerned about, I had actually an aside discussion with another school committee member in Division 3, and I'm glad Lindsay said to attend that one, because I wasn't sure, because I was a delegate and it started and I'd have to leave early, so I wasn't planning on, but Lindsay recommended and I went. And one of the comments I got was that buses and transportation, this particular school committee member indicated that the bus companies have divided up Massachusetts. So when you go out for a bid, you're going to get that company and you're going to get only one bid. And I thought, gee, sounds like collusion to me. I think it's something we should perhaps ask someone if they can take a quick look.
You're talking to the right guy about that.
Yeah, and I'm not too sure, but before we go into contract, I think perhaps a phone call for the authorities to take a look at this could be wrong, but it'd be nice to know, and if it is the case.
So it's an interesting comment. I'll be brief. Both one of the key issues of agreement between the Mass Association of School Committees leadership and the Mass Association of School Superintendents leadership is this topic. It just is. It's been going on for, as I said earlier tonight, a number of decades.
The other thing I came across that I didn't really think about, but I should have known, was when we get a grant or a gift that we accept, it's actually a contract. We must use it as it's specified in someone. I didn't think about that. And the other aspect of it, at least in elementary school, we used to donate tissues and wipes and so on. We're supposed to accept that also, otherwise it's seen as a gift to the teacher. And we might be violating some rules there. So it might be something we communicate to everyone, whatever the estimated dollar amount is, that we as a school committee accept that. But overall, outstanding experience. I learned a lot. I took a lot of notes, which I will go over, and thanks to Lizzie, now I'm going to have to write them up too, type them up too.
You can take a picture of it too, if that's faster.
So
Good idea.
One of the things, and I was in and out, but one of the things we try to do is actually divvy up, since there was 3 of us there. So the most important one I went to on behalf of the district was the AI and policy. So I'm coming back with examples for the school committee. I'll share them with you so that you can have them, but we need to start thinking about that. And one of the reasons was the Hyannis case that you've been hearing about, but even before that, academic freedom, academic integrity, those were the key things that came up. Being very clear with students how they use it, and a number of districts don't try to stop them from using it. Don't do what we did with the cell phones early on. Try to educate, and put policies and practices in place that will be positive. I did go to a transportation one as well, and again, I actually left that one because they were repeating some of the stuff we were already doing. The last one for me was we had ended up with a small cohort of superintendents looking at our budgets and like, what are we doing? We had a lot of discussions around shared costs and how other people are doing it, why they're doing it. So I'll put a couple of bullet points so that you guys can have that as information. One of the key things that came up that I think I shared this with you folks already, but is that any shared joint cost agreement must be approved by the Commissioner of Education. And the reason is that the end-of-year reports and all of that can be swayed in such a way for a community because of those agreements. And so the commissioner or his delegate has to review those and accept them. If the town and the schools don't have an agreement, the commissioner's office will, quote, make one for you. In other words, assign it to one of his senior folks who will look at the history and what's been happening and say, well, this is what you're going to do until you can come to an actual agreement. So I thought that was a really interesting conversation and I guess you could say timely.
Oh, you just remind me, sorry. There was one last thing that I was communicating with other school committees members in the Division 3 was the Yonder pouches.
Yeah, I got that. I already wrote it.
And then just so the parents will know if that does come down the line, if in the near future Desi's thinking of these pouches, which you can actually put your cell phone in, and when your student comes to the door, they scan it, and the scanning locks the pouch. So it's locked and RF shielded, so you can't get a signal in, you can't get a signal out, and of course, at the end of the day, you scan it again, it unlocks it. Of course, in case of emergency, you do have the potential to rip it's not that secure. You can rip it apart and get access to your phone if you have to, but obviously then everyone knows you rip the pouch to get to your phone during class.
So I know a little bit about them. I don't know who's utilizing them. I just haven't gotten that. So this has come out in a different way. It was a local school system that very early on who wanted to put a geo block on the building during the day so that kids wouldn't use their cell phone. It was found to be unconstitutional. Very interesting. So that's when you sent me the email. I was like, oh, okay, so this might be a little, I don't know, I'm not an attorney, I don't play one on TV, so I'll leave it to them to decide, but it's a big question within the ACLU area. So, but I did move it forward to Katrina to kind of do some digging about it, who's using it, why, so on and so forth. So just to let you know.
Thank you.
Yep.
If I can just, one last thing, sorry, to define. Oh, thank you. Division 3 that Armando has mentioned a couple times, just Karen and Chris for your, do you know this? Stop me if you know this. I don't mean to like patronize. Division 3 is our geographical division of the MASC, so it's districts in our area geographically. So I think, I had to dip out of that one a little early, but I think in the past they've done like meet and greets. It's like really good way to just like meet school committee members from other communities, like brainstorm, share ideas. So just I can forward anything I get that's related to that.
They will have get-togethers outside of that too. Usually I'm not able to go to them, but if I see the information, I'll forward it to you. If you're just interested in getting to know other communities, sometimes it's helpful to learn where we are perhaps more functional than we think we are. So, but they do have other get-together events. So, yes, another service from the MASC. All right. Well, thank you. We'll look forward to the notes. Just quick catch up on correspondence. The state championship for U.S. bands for Massachusetts and Rhode Island was on October 26th. I don't know who was. I know, Chris, you were there. Karen, you were there too. I was able to go. It was a gorgeous night. A little windy, but it was wonderful. So much better than the rain. But congratulations to the marching band and to Pops for a very well hosted competition and performance. And congratulations to the SHS on their win for that. So I attended the OMS Veterans Day Assembly on November 7th. I want to thank Mrs. Valaire and Ms. Crowley and the whole OMS faculty staff in the 8th grade for the invitation. It was really a great assembly. I've never been to it before, but it was really wonderfully done. I want to thank the veterans, first of all, for your service, but thank you for participating and allowing the students to interview you and the students to honor you. A special congratulations to Mr. Brian Turner, who was the OMS Veteran of the Year. A very impressive resume. One of those people that makes you realize that you've done very little to change the world, and here's this wonderful man who's done all this stuff. So really great assembly. So again, thank you very much for that invitation. Anything else for correspondence or anything else? All right. Just a reminder, our meeting for November 19th was changed to a budget working group, so the school committee is not meeting. We do have our MASC budget workshop on Monday, November 25th, 6:30 to 8 here in the conference room. The next regular school committee meeting will be Tuesday, December 3rd here in the conference room at the district offices. If there's nothing else. Yes.
Just real quick, though, so that PD for you folks is just you folks, and it's a posted meeting, right?
Yes.
Just got to make sure that we tell Kathy.
Yes, she's already working on that.
Physically here?
Physically
I thought we
here?
talked about virtual.
I will see if we can do a virtual option. Let me check into that.
We don't have to. I just would like to know so I'm in the right place.
Okay, all right. Currently, I believe that it is supposed to be in person, but I can, if you need to do hybrid, we can check into it, but.
Just good to know. 'cause
They're
we
physically coming here.
We initially talked about doing
Yes, okay.
virtual training.
No, they're physically coming here, so they will be here at this current
I'll take
moment.
that right now.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
No, somebody has to make it. You have to first it. Can you want to first it?
Motion to adjourn.
All right. Made by Karen, second.
Second by Ellen.
All right, second by Lindsay. A roll call vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Chris! Aye.
All right, 5 carried. That's 5-0. And that is what time? Meeting is adjourned at 9:30. Thank you all for coming in. New night.